Welcome to Inclusive Gathering Birmingham. If you haven't been with us before, we're an inclusive and affirming church that's fairly new, that normally is based in Birmingham City Centre, but we've been online completely since March. So if you're gay or straight, whatever your gender identity, whatever your political or theological thinking at the minute, whatever your ability or disability or anything really, you're very welcome to be with us on this learning journey together of what we love to have create spaces where we can talk about tough things and we can learn how to care for each other through maybe forming new opinions or disagreeing about stuff, and all of that is okay. We want this to be a safe space for people to explore what they think and what they believe. So it's been a really tough week for lots of us. So again, I don't want to go too far into this without acknowledging that lots of us are a bit exhausted and sideswiped by some of the news that's come out this week. And we're in the process as a community of figuring out what that means for us and our plans. And as we know more, we'll keep talking about that. Today is one of our, every month we have a book and podcast club, we call it, where we draw the themes for this gathering from either a book or podcast. And today, Julie is going to be leading us in a discussion of a podcast based on the book by, I'm just checking her name, Caroline Criado Perez. And the book is called Invisible Women, Data Bias in a World Designed for Men. It's not like a specifically faith-based book or podcast, but actually it draws lots of themes about what it means for people to feel othered or not valued, and we're going to use that today to kind of have those kinds of conversations and to talk about what it means to really honor women of all types. So that's what we're going to be doing today, and we're going to hand over to Eek, who's going to be playing a song. You'll see me again because I'm in Eek, and I'll see you again in a little bit.
1, 2, 3, 4. You always leave your light on. I can see it, I can tell. All the way from here. Don't know what to do about it. You know I've got nothing here to give. Thought you'd be waiting up ahead. but you came back down the road for me instead. You always leave your shine on. It messed me up, it got inside my head. I thought I'd walked away, but everywhere I see your face. Thought you'd be waiting up ahead, but you came back down the road for me instead. I don't want to be alone without you. Ooh, without you. Ooh. Where has the time gone? I've become less certain by the day, but running into you like this makes me feel something real. Don't want it to go away. Thought you'd be waiting up ahead, but you came back down the road for me instead. I don't want to be alone without you. Ooh, try to, but I can't go without you. Ooh, try to, but I can't go without you. Ooh, without you. Ooh. Once you know something, you can't unknow it. Once you feel the buzz of a lightning strike, once you see something, you can't unsee it. You've never been happier to lose a fight. I don't want to be alone without you. Ooh, try to, but I can't go without you. Ooh, try to, but I can't go without you. Ooh, oh, I tried it without you. Ooh, oh, I don't want to be alone without you.
Hi, I'm Sam, and as part of our regular worship gathering when we meet together in person, we always have what we call a question for sharing, to give people a moment to connect with each other. Obviously, we can't do that in the same way today, but we still want to ask you a question, give you a few minutes to share your answers in the comments on Facebook Live. This week's question is, has there been a time when you felt invisible, your voice unheard, your views ignored?
Hi everyone, I'm Mol and I'm here to answer the question, have I ever felt invisible, my views ignored? And the answer to that is yes, lots of times in my life. When I got my autism diagnosis and school did zilch about listening to my needs and accommodation, they basically said, yeah, we can make things early and you can sit in your spot, but you still have to eat in the dining room, which is too loud and makes me not want to eat. I also felt ignored when I was talking to a neighbour about eating and eating disorders, and my mum, who's a GP, just said, well, you can see Sasha, my psychiatrist, but you can't take any more tablets because that's not going to solve anything, and I don't get why you're doing that. You're not seriously unwell, you don't look seriously unwell, so you obviously don't have an eating disorder. And to give you context to that, I did have an eating disorder 3 years ago during the time of being kicked out of school for a few weeks because everything was going out of control, and my food intake was the only thing I could control. So yeah, I've been ignored or felt invisible so many times in my life, and I'm sure there'll be many more times to come. But thankfully, I am happy speaking my truth, as loud as ever. And if people don't like it, don't like what I've got to say, then fine. They are not meant to be around me and support. And I'm so thankful to IGB and the friendships I've made here. But I think I'm going to be stepping back a bit. But let's see how things go. I'm sort of midway through my journey of deconstruction. Thanks. Bye.
We're going to be sharing some words together in a minute. They're taken from a prayer that's called Sacred Vessels of the Holy, a litany for honoring the bodies, minds, hearts, and souls of women, written by a friend of mine, Elena Ramsey. It's a call and response kind of prayer, and a number of us are going to be speaking it together. So you're very welcome to join in wherever you are, particularly on the lines of refrain or anything really that you like to. But it's completely fine to just let the words wash over you.
For the battered, bruised, and broken, for all who bear assaults to their dignity, mind, body, and soul.
For all who have been discredited and dismissed. Deep calls unto deep. We see you, we hear you, we believe you.
For our sisters who battle degrading and dehumanizing systems to seek refuge, safety, or asylum.
Deep calls into deep. We see you, we hear you, we believe you.
For our black and brown sisters who are rendered invisible by white supremacy, who are forced to survive amongst those enslaved by ignorance and hate.
Deep calls unto deep. We see you, we hear you, we believe you.
For our queer, femme and trans sisters who are erased and excluded with every passing breath.
Deep calls unto deep. We see you, we hear you, we believe you.
For all those who long to bear children and those who do not. For the lonely, the anxious, and the caregivers among us. Deep calls unto deep. We see you, we hear you, we believe you.
As deep calls unto deep, may you arise in all of your giftedness and glory.
May you move in this world with power and grace. May you live as a holy vessel of love, fully knowing, in the spirit of the Creator who calls you image bearer of the divine. Remember who you are and whose you are.
You are beloved. You are of sacred worth. Amen.
This is the passage from Luke's Gospel, one of the 4 narratives of Jesus' life written in the Bible. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen. Remember how he told you when he was still with you in Galilee. The Son of Man must be delivered over to the hand of sinners, be crucified, and on the 3rd day be raised again." Then they remembered his words. When they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. They did not believe the women, because the word seemed to them like nonsense. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away, wondering to himself what had happened.
Hi, it's Julia here, and I just thought I'd have a quick word about why I chose that passage to go with the podcast conversation about invisible women that we're just about to have. In some ways, it's obvious the women are being ignored. And it's not just one woman that's being ignored. There's Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the others, and they were all ignored because, well, what they said didn't really sound good. It sounded foolish, didn't it? And they were probably thinking, you know, these women have been up all night. They don't know what they're talking about. We men, we know what we're doing. But I also love this passage because it's an example of where God uses a group that are largely ignored by the rest of society, even though in that case it makes up half, but they're given perhaps the most important message in the whole of human history. So I think it's really important that we're really careful not to ignore groups and to remember that God doesn't ignore so-called minority groups.
I'm here with my friend Claire, and we're going to talk about the book Invisible Women. Claire, you've got the book there, haven't you? Could you just show people?
I have indeed, yes.
So, Claire, how did you come across this book? I know I put something up on Facebook that I'd read it and really liked it, and you immediately said, oh, yeah, I like that book.
I was doing a photography project on women over 50 called it was called Vanishing Women, and it was looking at the way women over 50 often fade from the public eye. I was looking for university at what women, especially older women, contribute to society, and often behind the scenes.
Right.
So I did a series of portraits of women, and my wife said, I've seen this wonderful book, you might be interested in it. So that's the way I came across it.
Excellent. And have you got any particular story you want to pick out from us, or bit of detail that comes to mind?
My favourite part of it was that there was skeletons, if they're exhumed, if they're unknown, they're presumed male until proven otherwise. And over 100 years ago, there was a Viking warrior skeleton, but the Burka warrior, and it was assumed male for over 100 years, even though it had a female pelvis, because it was buried with warrior gear. And it was said that a woman couldn't be a warrior until 2017, when they did a DNA test on the skeleton, which proved that it was a woman.
Excellent.
So
I mean, there's so many of those cases where we are told that we don't have many famous women in history because perhaps they didn't have the chances and all the rest of it. But it seems more and more that there were more famous women, but their stories were buried. I mean, even in the Bible, but I mean, all sorts of other situations historically as well.
Yeah.
One of the stories I wanted was a story that she started with at the beginning, where they were in a town, or that she was looking at a situation in a town in Sweden where they decided to actually have a look at the data around different policies. And one of the councillors joked that they should start with something that had no gender bias, like clearing the roads of snow ploughing, etc., and things like that. But when they looked at it, they actually discovered that there was a gender bias. And the issue, which won't surprise you, was that because men were more likely to drive than women, that women obviously therefore were more likely to use public transport. But not only that, they were much more likely to be pushing something, whether it's pushchair, pram, shopping trolleys, all sorts of things like that. It was much less likely to be going in and out of town. It might be circuiting around. So their trips were much harder than the straightforward in and out of town. They might, for example, be dropping off their kids at school and then going to visit somebody in hospital, or going to look after an elderly relative, or whether they were working or not, they'd be more likely to be stopping off on the way home and picking up things for dinner and all that sort of thing. So their journeys were much more complex. A lot of them would be on the ground. And the men, the panel, which I think were mainly men, did agree that, oh yes, it probably is harder for women to push a pushchair than it is for men to drive through 3 inches of snow, especially somewhere like Sweden, where they've obviously got geared up to it. So they decided that they would, instead of prioritising the drivers, they actually cleared the snow for pedestrians and public users first. Now, this wasn't meant as a cost-saving exercise. It was actually genuinely meant to help the women. But what they found was that they did save money because there was a huge reduction in the number of people in the hospitals, because it was mainly pedestrians who fell over in the snow,
Yes.
and most of the pedestrians were women. And I can't remember the figures, but I think it was something like it was the equivalent saved in hospital visits as something like 2 or 3 years of road mending. So that was just one example out of hundreds and hundreds in this book, where the whole of society, and there was a cost saving, benefited by actually looking to see what women were doing.
Yet in the New Statesman in 2017, there was an article that said that statistically worldwide, women are more likely to use public transport. But in the UK, in the last 2 terms of the Conservative government, and under their austerity, they've cut budgets to public transport, but continue to fund roads and motorways.
Shocking,
and it's meant that 70% of councils have had to cut their public transport budget. The transport that women are more likely to use is being cut.
Yeah. There are a whole load of different interesting areas in the book, and we're not going to cover a fraction of them. But one area that I was quite surprised about was looking at design. And I mean, we talk about the default male, and I'm very conscious of it a lot of the time when I'm using language, but even I find myself tripping over, and she makes the same point that she did, like visualizing a man when you first think of scientists, even though I catch myself and I make myself not do it. But what I hadn't realized was the extent to which so much stuff is designed with men in mind. So voice recognition was something that we started to use at work, and it would never work for me. I am talking sort of 5-10 years ago, but the blokes didn't seem to have any problem. Well, I now know that it's because voice recognition was tested on men and not on women, and therefore actually if you're trying to use voice recognition, it's not working, they suggest you try and speak with a deeper voice.
Yeah. And bizarrely, kitchen cupboards are at the height that they are because it was the height was based on a 50th percentile man. And crash dummies are designed for a 50th percentile man as well.
Yeah.
So women in an identical car crash to a man are, I think it was something.
I think it's 71% if it's a moderate injury. It's more like women are more likely to get a moderate injury. 47, 45, I can't remember exactly, if it's a serious injury. So women are 45% more likely to get a serious injury, and 17% more likely to die. And the crash dummies thing is interesting because it was saying in the book that that I think it was the EU brought in some recent regulation, but they still only used a smaller male dummy, and they only used it in the passenger seat, and they didn't take any notice of what would happen if somebody was pregnant or not.
I get that it's important that we do that, but it's also important that we try it on a female frame as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We wouldn't want to go the other way. But I mean, some of these, talking about pregnancy reminds me that in the book again, they were talking about after disasters. You have the disaster where so many people lose their lives, and that's terrible. But there's a a huge knock-on effect for women after the disasters. Women who are pregnant are much more likely to die because they haven't got the facilities, etc. And a lot of women in some areas, there'll be a lot of women who are pregnant. I didn't realise how many people are pregnant at any one time in the UK, let alone in sort of some of the areas where there's more poverty and they don't have access to family planning, etc. They're more likely to be violence against women. And when the people go in to check, you know, what the needs are, they'll ask the men.
Well, in India, young girls and men, if they don't have a toilet in their house, they're at a far higher risk of being sexually assaulted if they have to go to the toilet outside of the house. Mm-hmm. And after a particularly gruesome murder of 2 young teenage girls, there was a public outcry, and there was a world public outcry.
Yeah, I remember.
And the Indian government said so many millions to build secure and safe toilet blocks in areas. Yeah. And 2 years later, not one brick had been laid, and the money was taken away because it wasn't used.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to know why it wasn't used, wouldn't it? You know.
But even something as simple as a cartoon, back in 2007, it was found that 13% of non-human cartoon characters were female, only 13%. And between 1990 and 2005, in all films released, only 28% of speaking parts were given to women or females.
Yeah. It just goes on, doesn't it?
It does. I don't believe that all men want to discriminate against women at all.
No, I mean, I think one of the points that she made, wasn't it, that it's a lot of these situations, if not all of them, nobody actually meant to discriminate or exclude the women. It's just that what appeared to be objective in the men's minds, because they were mainly men, it's actually mainly biased towards what the men saw the need to be.
Yes, instead of inviting women to contribute and inviting women onto the boards of town planning and things like that, they're deciding for women.
Yeah. I saw some figures that were saying that for negotiations after a conflict, if women were included in the discussions, then they were more likely to come to a peace agreement, and the peace agreement was more likely to hold. Now, I don't know why that would be, but it does appear to be to make a difference. Okay, well, I think we need to be wrapping this up now. I think I just wanted to make the point that while we're talking about women, I mean, we're both very positive people, so we're not whinging about the situation, and we do recognise that there's been huge strides and things have got much better for women, but also that these issues are ongoing issues in many cases, and often it's not just the women who then suffer from the issues, but it is often people who are disadvantaged in other ways who might also suffer in the way that the women are suffering. So, well, thank you for talking to me about Invisible Women. It was a very good book and I'd highly recommend it, and I'd highly recommend people watch the podcast that we suggested beforehand if you haven't done previously. So thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Julia.
So this is our love feast. We decided to do this today from Damasceno Coffee Shop in Moseley. I want to introduce you to Josh. This is our new intern. And if you haven't been with us before for a love feast, it's this time in our online service that's become kind of special to us, where we share food and drink wherever we are, and it's a way of kind of remembering hospitality is important, and that the ways that Jesus related to food were really significant in his life and in his ministry. And so I'm a little bit sad, Josh, that you're missing out on our lovely cake spread that we normally have when we meet in person. Yeah, and so you're getting a different kind of flavor of inclusive gathering than you would in a normal year. But I'm just, maybe if you just tell us for a minute what it is that you're hoping to kind of get out of this experience of, this year with us.
So for me, growing up in an inclusive, kind of passively inclusive background where nothing was thrown off the table for acceptance of identity, but it wasn't discussed. I really wanted to come somewhere and experience what active inclusion looked like, and what having those difficult conversations looked like, because that was something that frustrated me, and I've been looking for a while. So that's one thing, and then seeing what community that produces. To me that's something really exciting, and I've already seen a little bit of it. I'm looking forward to being a part of that community. Finding out what that means.
Great. Well, you can feel free to kind of reach out to Josh and get to know him a bit, and you'll see him around as we try some new things and experiment together. So, but now's the time where we get to eat lovely food from Damascena. I don't know if you can see it in the camera. I've got a chocolate croissant. What do you have?
Pain au chocolat. Oh no, I don't. Pain au raisin.
Oh, very good, very good. So if you've got food wherever you are, dig in. Feeling that pressure to eat quickly when you're on camera. So thanks for joining us today. At 5:15, we're going to be moving over to Zoom for those who'd like to continue this conversation about the podcast and the themes we've discussed today. You may have noticed today's service was a little bit shorter than normal. We're kind of experimenting with this idea of, if we want to encourage people to talk on Zoom, we don't want to totally exhaust them with a super long Facebook Live gathering. We're always learning. So we'll see how this works. Again, if you have had a tough week and you could do with people to chat to or just a heart-to-heart conversation, I'd love to hear from you. You can send me an email at newchurchbirmingham@gmail.com, and it could be set up a chat with me or with one of the others from our leadership community. We'd love to be in touch with you and help to support you if that's something that you like. So today was like I said, a podcast club, and we do that every month. Next month, we're actually going to be looking at the book Shameless by Nadia Bolz-Weber. And so I'm just giving you a bit of a heads up now in case that's something that you'd like to read to join in the discussion next month. But there's never any pressure to have read it. And we'll also post some podcasts so you can get an idea of what Nadia talks about, even if you don't have the time or the inclination to read the book. Speaking also of what's coming up, well, this next week, we're going to be going back to our look at the stories of Jesus. But the week after that, the feminist theologian and poet Nicholas Lee is going to be with us. And we're going to have a special Q&A session with her live after the Facebook Live gathering. So we're looking forward to that. And as I said earlier, we're continuing to think about the government's new restrictions and advice, and our leadership community are having some really in-depth conversations about that. And it's not just about adhering to the rules, but also just making wise decisions. And so we'll keep you in the loop about what the plans are, whether we're going to continue to, just being online or what that will look like. We will continue our online gatherings regardless, even if we do start to have some in-person meetups. But I just wanted to be honest about that we're still working out what that looks like for us, because our priority is to take care of you and to do things that are helpful and serve the community. If you're a regular part of our community gatherings and you see this as kind of a home space for you, you might be interested in making a financial contribution to the kind of running costs of what it costs to put this together and edit and things like that. And we also are developing this idea of a fund so that we can respond to local needs and needs in the community. So if you're interested in being part of giving to that, there's more information at inclusivegathering.org.uk/give. But please don't feel that that's any kind of requirement to come along to things. It's just something that you feel pulled to do, then you're very welcome to do that. So I think that is about all for today. We'll see you on Zoom in a little bit, but I'm going to close with our blessing that we close with every week. May we live fully, may we love wastefully, and may we have the courage to be all that God has created us to be. We'll see you at 5:15 on Zoom.